Okay, in this lesson we're going to talk about the circle of fifths and how you can use that to practice your guitar theory. So I've got the cover sheet for C major and A minor open from Fretboard Mastery. Now there's 12 of these, one for each key, and it's just used to organise your folders so that you can find which key that you're working in nice and quickly. There's a lot of sheets, so I'll just separate them into keys. So that's just the title and a bit of a legend to help you orientate yourself around the diagrams. But we're going to concentrate on the circle of fifths for this lesson. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a bit of a briefing on the circle of fifths and how we can use that to practice our theory. Now, most of you will just look at this if you haven't seen it before and just wonder what is all this gobbledygook. So basically, what it is the 12 notes of music represented on the outside of the circle. So if you count those, there's 12 notes there. Now I covered that in an earlier lesson. The 12 notes of Western music. I think I covered it in the major scale in lesson 1. Okay, now if we start with C, it's at the top of the circle. That's C major. Outside of the circle is the major keys. So for each 12 notes we have a tonality. There are 12 notes obviously, so if there's 12 notes to the guitar fretboard as well. So if you were to play the C note, it has a very different tonality to the B note, which is the last of the C major scale. So you can see that just by changing the tone of the major scale, we can effectively get a different key. So that's what we mean by a key of music. Now inside the circle we have its relative minor. So I've discussed this in previous lessons also. I think in lesson 3 I covered the relative minor. So the relative minor for C is A. So A is a natural minor to the C major scale. Also, if we move around the circle, we have the G major scale. On the inside of the circle is its relative minor, and that is the E minor scale. If we move around the circle again, we have the D major, and on the inside of the circle is its relative minor of the B minor scale. So if we go all around for our 12 notes, we can find all of our relative minors. Okay, so why do we call it the circle of fifths? Now the circle of fifths gets its name because every key is the fifth note of the major scale before it. So if we start with C major, and everything is derived from C major, it's the only key without any sharps or flats. So I've just drawn it up here, or written out the notes of C major. A C, D, E, F, G, A and B. Now if we look at the fifth note is G. C is the first, D is the second, E is the third, F is the fourth, G is the fifth. And so G becomes our next major scale on the circle. Now if we look at the notes for the G major scale, it contains one sharp. The F sharp, I'll cover that later. But the notes for the G major scale, I've written them over here, are G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. So the fifth note is the D. G is the first, A is the second, B is the third, C is the fourth, D is the fifth. So that's where we get our name for the D major scale. So if we travel around the circle of fifths, every fifth note is the one from the scale before it. Okay, now inside the circle where we have the treble clef, I'll just explain this part. You can see here under the C major scale that there's no notes on the treble clef. And then as we move around, we have one sharp note for the G major scale and E minor scale, 2 sharp notes for the D and the B. So you can see as we move around the circle of fifths that we're just adding an extra sharp. So now there's 3 sharps for the A and F sharp minor. Moving to the E major, contains 4 sharps for the C sharp minor. B major scale or the C flat major scale contains 5 sharps. So you can see there's a pattern developing as we move around the circle. We're adding an extra sharp. Now if we go backwards around the circle, we're actually adding a flat. So the F major scale or D minor scale has a flat, contains one flat note. The B flat major scale or G minor scale contains 2 flats. So yeah, you can see that we're just adding flats as we go around the circle. Okay, for those that don't know what the treble clef means, you can probably do some more research on this, but I'll just describe it briefly. I've just written the acronyms over here, but the notes for the treble clef spell out face if we're travelling up the treble clef. So the notes in between the lines spell out face. So that's F, A, C, B. And then this acronym spells out the notes that fall on the lines on the treble clef. Every good boy deserves fruit. So starting from the bottom, every good boy deserves fruit. Now those notes are the ones that fall on the lines, and the face acronyms are the ones that fall in between the lines. So if we move around, we know that it's every good boy deserves fruit. So this note will be the F sharp. If we go around to the B minor or D major scale, we know that it's already got the F sharp. So the next sharp that we're adding, if we go to the face acronym, F, A, C, is the C sharp. Now if we move around to the A major scale, the F sharp minor scale, we already have the F sharp, the C sharp, and we're also adding the G sharp, which is the next note after F. So you see here I've just labelled them all. C contains no sharps or flats. G contains the F sharp. So you can see the notes, 7 common notes are always going to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So if we're going to add a sharp, we're adding it to the F sharp. Similarly, the C sharp to the D major scale, so it contains the 2 sharps there. This is the A major scale or the F sharp minor if we were to start from the F sharp tone, would spell out the F sharp minor scale containing 3 sharps as shown here on the treble clef. Now there's another way to remember the order of the sharps and the flats. You can see here that the F sharp comes first, and then we're adding the C sharp, and then we're adding the G sharp, and then we're adding the D sharp. So I've written out the acronym to remember that over here. Father Christmas gets drunk after every beer. F, C, G, D, A, E, B. So that's just the acronym to help you remember what the notes are as you travel around the circle, or the order of the sharps this is called. Now if we were to go onto the other side of the circle, it would be the order of flats. So if we look here, we're adding a flat to the F major scale or D minor scale. So the flat, we know from our acronym, every good boy is the B flat, which is also beer from our other acronym. So if we spell out this acronym backwards, that's our order of flats. So the next one will be E from every. The next one will be A from our face acronym, see it there in between. Next one will be D, we're just adding one as we're going around. So that's a bit of a briefing on the circle of fifths and how it gets its name and what all the what everything means. So hopefully that's that can clear up some things for you. Yeah, you might want to do a bit more research and get your head around it if it doesn't explain it clearly enough. But that'll just get you started around the circle of fifths. Okay, so now that we know what the circle of fifths is, how do we use the circle of fifths to help our theory practice? Now basically how you use the circle of fifths is that whenever you learn anything in theory, you should pass it around the circle so that you get an understanding of that bit of theory in all 12 keys. So if I use the C major bar chord, for example, it's not a tremendous amount of work. We know that if we just move the C major bar chord to the G position, playing the G in the root, then we're playing the G major chord. If we do the same thing and move it down to the D note, D root note for the D major bar chord, we'll get the D major bar chord. So you can see that it's not that difficult to do. Once we know something, it's just a matter of moving it around the fretboard and finding the different positions to play it. So that's how we move around the circle of fifths to just open up our guitar theory into all keys on the guitar fretboard. And if we're taking all the notes into consideration, we enhance our memory of the fretboard. So yeah, it's just a great tool for practicing whatever it is you're practicing. Okay, I've just opened this up, and this might help you with your practice as well. Now there's no end to the things that you can learn on the guitar, so it's good to have a dedicated practice regime and have the 5 major things that you need to learn, and then travel around a cycle like the cycle of, or the circle of fifths. So what I do, and this is a weekly chart, it's divided in fifths, so each fifth represents a day basically, and if I miss a day, then I just go to the next day. So if I'm on this day here, for example, and then I accidentally miss a day, I just go to the next day that I should be learning. Anyway, so generally I start the day with some scales, so I play those for 30 minutes or so just to get warmed up, and then whatever key I'm working in at the time, once I'm finished with that key, then I'll move it around the circle of fifths. So say that I'm working in A major, for example. Once I've finished looking at that, I'll get to the F sharp minor and study the F sharp minor scale, which is the relative minor, and then move that around the cycle of fifths, or the circle of fifths, to the E major scale, and then learn the C sharp minor scale from there. So that's one way you can practice your scales. You see that I practice scales pretty much every day. That's just to get warmed up. And then on this day, for example, I'll put in 30 minutes of triads as well. I'll cover those later. I'll do some lessons on triads, arpeggios, chords. That pretty much opens up the whole guitar neck if you can learn those basic shapes for scales, triads, chords and arpeggios. So once I've kind of warmed myself up with that scale theory or chord theory, it's generally about an hour, then I'll move on to probably about an hour of either a guitar lesson from somebody else, or I spent an hour learning licks, or here I've got a lesson again, or some songs that you're either learning or you're putting together yourself. So you can see that by moving around this cycle of fifths, you're actually covering everything on the guitar that you want to learn in a week, and if you do miss something, you're going to get to it eventually by going around the circle. So just at the end of the day, I'll play a couple of songs too, just to keep those in the repertoire. Some days that I'm not practicing, I might just mess around with some settings and stuff like that on the guitar and amp and all of that. So yeah, I'll either do that on the days off or just when I'm playing with some songs. Sometimes I just get carried away and just want to play songs. So yeah, that's just a bit of a briefing on how I like to practice, and I think you can benefit from that too. I should have mentioned there that when you're learning triads and chords and arpeggios and even licks as well, it's good to move them around the circle of fifths and learn them in all keys, because yeah, even licks, if you learn a cool lick and you only learn it in one key, you're kind of limiting yourself to what songs you can play it to. So yeah, if you move the licks around to a few common keys that you're generally playing, then yeah, you open up you open up the guitar fretboard a lot further, and yeah, it's very handy for chords and triads too. So if I go back to the circle, so that you're learning triads in C major, then towards the end of your lesson, once you've figured out C major, then you move it to G, and then move it around to D, and then A, and then E, and it won't take too long, but it just helps you to open up the guitar fretboard in all keys. And same for chords. If you're learning chord shapes in B major or G sharp minor, for example, then you can move it around the circle and learn it in all keys. There's no end to it really. Like once you get around the circle, you're going to be learning something else around the circle anyway. So yeah, there's really no end to what you learn in music, and that's how I've kind of based my weekly schedule as well, so that it's always continual. Yeah, it's like a wheel moving around. You just keep adding to your knowledge as you sort of grow with your theory practice. Okay, well that covers today's lesson, and I hope you got something from that. If there's any questions, please just shoot me a message or a comment. Yeah, and anyone that hasn't got these scale diagrams already, please follow the links and download those. And I'll see you all next week. Thanks.